let's talk about giant cinnamon roll cake. How are you? Allie and Birdie here. I did do my hair today, but Birdie is bound and determined to destroy it. So bear with me as my pet bird tries to eat me alive. This idea was given to me by one of my top contributors, Christina, who also has her own website at Simple Everyday Recipes, and she's amazing. She's wonderful. She has completely changed my life. I love her, and I highly recommend that you visit her website. Give her a big hand, because this was her idea, and it's freaking brilliant. All it is a cinnamon roll, but instead of 12 individually portioned cinnamon rolls, you get one huge, massive cinnamon roll cake. I mean, it is beyond so yummy, and I think it would be perfect for a special occasion such as Christmas morning. But really, I mean, who wouldn't love a cinnamon roll any day of the week? So I just took my regular cinnamon roll recipe that's been on my website for years and that I make at least once a year. It's a holiday favorite for me and my kids, and I just put it into high gear. But one thing that I do want to share is I was actually laying in bed awake one night thinking about my cinnamon roll filling, trying to figure out how to make my cinnamon roll filling taste more like a certain fast food chain that specializes in cinnamon rolls. You know the one. I know you know the one. I know you can't go to the mall without getting one, because I can't. So have you ever noticed that those cinnamon rolls, there is like a distinct contrast between the moist, fluffy bread of the cinnamon roll and the cinnamon brown sugar butter filling itself? The filling is very gooey and jammy almost. It's almost like a cinnamon jam. And as much as I love my good old-fashioned standby cinnamon roll recipe, I really wish that as it baked, the filling didn't just absorb into the bread. Like, I want that gooey texture. I want that ooey gooey, jammy cinnamon filling. So all these sleepless nights thinking about it have led me to the most incredible solution. But I'm gonna make you wait until the end before I share it. So let's dive into the ingredients. There are 3 components to this cinnamon roll cake. There's the dough, there's the filling, and there's the icing. So let's start with the dough. Here's what you're gonna need. You're gonna need some sugar. You're gonna need some warm water, and you're gonna need some dry active yeast, or is it active dry yeast? I always get it wrong. You know what I mean though. Make sure it's fresh. It's gonna help your cinnamon rolls to rise and puff up and be super fluffy and delicious. You're also gonna need some oil. I am using vegetable oil because it's pretty much flavorless. But if you want to put your own unique spin on it, then go ahead and use another type of oil. As long as it's liquid at room temperature, it will work just fine. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking liquid coconut oil might be really nice, or some sort of a nut oil like hazelnut oil or walnut oil would add a really special flavor to the yeast dough of your cinnamon roll cake. We're also gonna use buttermilk. Christina has done me the awesome favor of writing up a really great article about how to make your own buttermilk at home. Technically, it's not buttermilk, it is slightly different, but it's a very reasonable facsimile. So if buttermilk isn't something that you normally keep on hand, fear not. You can make a very good substitute with pantry staples. And I really like what buttermilk does for this dough. It enhances the flavor and the richness in a really nice way. So the oil, the buttermilk, you're also gonna need an egg, and you're gonna need some flour. You can use bread flour if you like, but I think all-purpose flour is just fine, and that's kind of my go-to when I make cinnamon rolls. And if you want a gluten-free option, I haven't personally tested it this way, but if you're using a cup for cup gluten-free flour blend, that should work really well. If you want to use some sort of a whole grain flour, you can probably swap that into whole grain flours. You tend to need a little bit less of them, so just keep that in mind. Those are the ingredients for the dough. The ingredients for the filling are soft butter, brown sugar, light or dark brown sugar will work just fine. I've chosen to use light brown sugar in the example you see in the video and photos here, and of course ground cinnamon. And then for the frosting, I don't think anything is better than cream cheese frosting on a cinnamon roll. Come after me, go ahead, I'll fight you for it. Cream cheese frosting is the way to go, cream cheese icing. So what you need for that is some soft butter, some soft cream cheese, the kind in the brick works best, a little bit of lemon juice. It's not gonna taste lemony, it just kind of brings out the tanginess of the cream cheese a little bit more, vanilla extract, and powdered sugar. And don't forget to stay tuned till the end of the video where I give you my best secret for enhancing that cinnamon roll filling and making it super ooey gooey jammy good. All right, so let's get started. The first thing you're gonna wanna do is make the dough because this is gonna take the longest. So let's start with that. All I have to do is put your sugar in a big mixing bowl, pour the warm water on top, and then sprinkle the yeast on top of that so that it can dissolve. Make sure that your water is warm but not hot. Hot water will kill the yeast. So err on the side of like a little cooler rather than warmer. You can check the temperature of the water with a digital thermometer, and if it's right around 105 degrees, then you're golden. It should feel like the temperature of a baby's bath. You don't want to kill that yeast, it's really important. Let the yeast dissolve, and then you can add in the other liquid ingredients, the oil, the buttermilk, and the egg. Just stir them in until everything's nicely combined, and now it's flour time. Now, if you are a bread baker, then you probably already know this. If this is a little outside your comfort zone, then I will share with you that most yeast bread recipes, the amount of flour can vary based on how humid it is in your kitchen on any given day. So the way I like to do this is I start by dumping in about 2/3 of the flour, mixing that up until you have a really sticky dough. And then with the mixer continuing to run, sprinkle in more flour until the dough gathers itself into a ball and pulls cleanly away from the sides of the bowl. So it'll be a stiff dough and it really won't be very sticky at all. That's when you know you've added the perfect amount of flour. So once you're to that point, then you can knead the dough. Kneading the dough is gonna activate the glutens, and it's gonna give that cinnamon roll dough, that cinnamon roll cake slash bread, a beautiful elastic texture that's gonna feel so good in your mouth. It's a little bit chewy, it's a little bit stretchy, and it's so super satisfying. So make sure you don't skimp on this step. I usually give it 10 minutes of kneading, and again, if you want to know if you've done a good enough job with the kneading, there's a little test you can do. They call it the window pane test. All you do is you tear off a little bit of that dough, you flatten it with your fingertips, and you stretch it out. Stretch it as thin as you can. It should stretch so thin that you can see the light through it like a window pane without tearing. Now, if you can do that and the dough doesn't tear, then you know you've done a really good job kneading the dough, and all those glutens are really activated, and it's gonna come out with a really nice springy texture. Once you're done kneading the dough, you can cover the bowl over lightly with plastic wrap, set it in a warm place, and allow it to rise. Keep in mind that when you are making an enriched bread dough, meaning it's got added fat in the form of oil, egg, and buttermilk, it's not gonna puff and rise as much as a leaner dough might. Don't worry, this is how it's meant to be. You're not doing anything wrong, and even though you don't see it doubling in volume necessarily as it's resting, it will puff up a lot when it bakes in the oven. So you still will have that really light, fluffy texture. So don't panic. You're good. You've got this, I promise you. While the dough is rising and the yeast is doing its thing, you can work on the cinnamon roll filling. And all you do here is you just toss your brown sugar and your cinnamon in a little bowl and you stir them together. It's that simple. And again, if you really want to take it to another level, then I do have a great secret for you, a really good pro tip at the end of the video. So set that aside. Your dough is rising. Once it's been sitting out in a warm environment on a sunny windowsill in your kitchen, or if you have a proof setting on your oven, you can stash it in there and make it really, really comfy so the yeast really can do its best work. Once your dough has had a nice long nap, warm, it's comfy, it's poofy, you can punch it down, you can roll it out. Now, I'm not gonna tell you what dimensions to roll it out to. I will say that the thinner you roll that sheet of dough, the better. And this is the reason why. You get more times around that spiral. You get thinner layers of bread with filling in between, so the ratio is really nice. It's not like it's mostly bread and just a little bit of filling. So you have your big rectangle, you're gonna spread a nice thick layer of soft butter all over, just like you're frosting a cake. And then you're gonna take that cinnamon roll filling, that cinnamon and brown sugar, and you're gonna sprinkle it all over in a nice even layer. Now, normally at this point with a regular cinnamon roll recipe, you would roll it up into a log. But we're doing a cinnamon roll cake here. It's special, it's different. So instead of doing that, we're gonna cut that sheet of dough into several long strips. I did 4. I think you could probably do 5 or even 6. It depends on the shape that you want your cinnamon roll cake to have. So I wanted mine to be on the taller side. If you want yours to be on the wider side and maybe a little bit less tall, then cut more strips. If you want it tall like mine, 4. And from here, you're gonna take your first strip and you're gonna roll it up just like a regular cinnamon roll. You're gonna roll it up. When you get to the end, instead of just taking it and plopping it in a rectangular dish, you're gonna start again and you're gonna continue that spiral with the next strip and the next strip until it gets really big, and you can plop it into a cake pan. It really doesn't matter what size cake pan you use, just whatever you have. I happen to use a springform pan, but you can use any cake pan that it'll fit into, and it doesn't have to take up the whole pan. You could even just bake it on a tray on a parchment lined baking sheet. That would work just fine too. So you're gonna put it with the spiral side up into the pan, and then if you still have more strips, then just lay them around the outside of that spiral and just continue that beautiful circular pattern. Cover it again with plastic and let it rise one more time. Preheat the oven, slide it in, bake it. Every oven's a little bit different, so you're gonna wanna keep an eye on it, flip the light on, and peek at it as it's baking to make sure that it's browning evenly. Take it out of the oven, let it cool. Let it rest a little bit, and while it's doing that, you can make your cream cheese icing. Start with the soft butter and the cream cheese, a little bit of lemon juice, a little bit of vanilla extract. Just beat those together until they're nice and smooth, and then add in the powdered sugar and whip it until it's fluffy. Personally, I wouldn't say this about any other type of cake that I can think of, but when it comes to cinnamon rolls, I don't mind putting the icing on when the cinnamon roll is still a little bit warm. It lets that icing melt. It lets it settle down into all those crevices and moisten everything up even more. And it's so good. So plop it all over the top. You can use an offset spatula to spread it out. Ease it over the sides of the cake a little bit so that it drapes down and drips in like this really tempting way. And that's your cinnamon roll cake made. What a fabulous treat for Christmas morning, right? Can you imagine as a kid waking up, Santa was here, he brought all these presents, and there's a giant cinnamon roll cake? I mean, come on. They've been so patient with me as I blabbed and gabbed on and on about how to make this cinnamon roll cake. Now I'm gonna share my secret with you. So how do you get that jammy filling? How do you get it so that the cinnamon roll filling, the butter and the sugar just don't absorb right into the bread dough as it's baking? The answer is you need some type of thickener, some sort of a starch. And it's really important that this starch can do its job without needing any heat. It needs to be able to do its job like that quick. So there are a few options out there, but the one I settled on is something called agar-agar. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. Maybe it's agar-agar. We're gonna go with agar-agar. I believe it is made from seaweed, but don't freak out. It's flavorless, odorless, and colorless, and it's perfectly smooth. If you don't want to use agar-agar, there are some other options for you. Off the top of my head, I can think of two. One is ground flaxseed and the other is ground chia seed. Both of these products will also thicken without any heat. However, I chose not to go that route because they do have a little bit of texture that reminds me almost of like a whole grain or like a nutty kind of texture, and I wanted my cinnamon roll filling to be perfectly smooth. And there's another product out there, I think it's called Clear Gel or Sure Gel. It's used in like jelly and jam making. That is another type of starch that will thicken at room temperature. I spooned about 1.5 teaspoons of agar-agar into my brown sugar and cinnamon mixture and just stirred it in and went on with the recipe as usual from there, and I was really happy with the result. I ordered the agar-agar on Amazon. You might be able to get it at your grocery store, and I'm going to include an affiliate sales link in the description here in case you want to give this a try. Like I said, it's a subtle difference, but I was pretty happy with the result, and I think I'm going to keep doing it from now on every time I make cinnamon rolls. It was that good. She's stuck. Okay. Oh, what a relief. So look for that link to agar-agar. And if you want to check out the full recipe and get all your questions answered, then click on over to bakingamoment.com. I'm going to include the direct link in the description here so you can either save or print the recipe. And if you have any questions that aren't answered in that blog post, then feel free to drop me a comment. I love hearing from you. Giant cinnamon roll cake, there you have it. Hope you enjoy.